how did we get here?
Mm.
I think it's good to talk about how we got here. Literally, this thing's come together in the last less than a month.
Well, so it was really interesting how this all came about, this whole arena method thing. I mean, it was only, I don't know what it was, 3 weeks ago or something.
Less than a month ago, Josh.
Less than a month ago, we went through that. We went through a transition period, and kind of took some times for ourselves, really. And then we connected, and I flew out to Florida to see you, not knowing what things are going to look like. We walked the office, hit the whiteboard.
We sat in this office right here, man.
Yeah. That was my new home for a while.
Just me, you, and a whiteboard. That's apparently things happen when we're in that environment.
Yeah, and Barkley was
and Barkley, he did make his contribution for sure.
And just spending 16 hours on the whiteboard, just figuring out, where are we? What are we doing? Why are we doing it? Where do we go from here? And it was really cool just having that unfiltered, authentic conversation about everything, right, to the core, and just seeing what came out on the other side. I mean, I had no idea what to expect when I came out there, but it was just amazing for sure.
Yeah, and I think one of the fun parts for me was us talking about like how to support people. Like, what are the things that we feel like hit the mark with people? What are the things we feel like missing the mark? And then challenging each other with all kinds of things and just getting after it. I mean, the funny thing we joke about today is we literally spent 2.5 hours talking about what responsibility means. You know what I mean? So fun. And then you fast forward it, 3.5 weeks later, and Arena Method was born. I mean, it's mind-boggling to really kind of wrap your head around what just unfolded in the last 3 to 4 weeks. In the time period. I mean, yes, we were putting in 12 to 14 hour days, but it's been just super fun for sure.
Yeah, I mean, Eve is cooking for us, so we can stay in there.
She had to come in and remind us, guys, do you want to eat? We're like, we're coming, Yeah. Thank you, Eve, for making sure we were fed.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's more than 2.5 hours on the responsibility conversation.
I was trying to be friendly. We did cut it short
Yeah, but that was so cool to feel so safe to have to literally debate everything and challenge each other on everything we believe in, on every point, every client takeaway, to just really figure out, because if you've been doing this for any length of time, we can find ourselves saying the same things, rooted in certain belief structures or whatever, and it's like, when was the last time that was really challenged? And is that actually my belief structure? Is that what I honestly believe? So it was, and then just being able to pull different references and from what's out there. Obviously, we didn't start any of this. There have been people before us, you know what I mean? Like, I love Brendan's thing where he says we stand on the shoulders of giants, right? Like, there's so many people before us that spent their whole life to this industry and to help people. And so we get to pull all of that to what resonates the most with us, what we think we can put forward for most people.
Absolutely, man. I mean, to have a conversation about all the different books we've read, the psychology courses we've taken, we both have that background, and just pulling in things from Carl Jung and Gabor Mate and Robert Sapolsky, and but Sadhguru's got a cool little thing about this too. And we just literally threw it all up there and extracted out the things that we felt would have the greatest impact on people, and also from our experience, what hit the mark and what didn't for people. It was really a magical experience, man. I really feel like, I know I've shared this with you, Josh, before, but I really feel like the 20 years that I've been on this journey of looking to not only extract the most out of my life and create the most extraordinary life for myself, but also how do I empower other people to do the same? That 20-year journey of that singular focus, I feel like has culminated to this moment, that moment of you and I in my office together, and this thing being birthed. I mean, it just made the last 20 years, all the different twists and turns, worth it. It all made sense to me in that moment.
Yeah. No, and I think we'll get into this a lot, but we're both wearing these Arena Method shirts, and there's the underlying focus of what this meant to us, and the meaning behind it is essentially what we both found at the core on what was a valuable pursuit for people and what helped regulate their experience of life was kind of the pursuit of something meaningful and how to find out what that is and how to be sensitive to its evolution, right? And what that looks like. And so, and then once you identify that and you keep your eyes open on the journey, seeing how that evolves into the arena and being able to consistently move towards what you find most meaningful and how that kind of molds you in your character development, who you want to be and what you want to stand for and what you don't want to stand for, what you don't want to be a part of anymore, right?
Sure.
So that it's, this whole arena method obviously comes from the Teddy Roosevelt quote, right? Man in the arena. And I think just metaphorically, it means so much, and that deep meaning pulls on our emotional strings, right? And it's like, okay, well, how does meaning play into emotion, right? Because it's like, I've never really felt like emotion was the pursuit. More of emotion was the thing that I would embody or it would descend upon me
A
on the
byproduct.
path, right? A byproduct of a meaningful aim,
Correct.
right? And paying attention to emotions in terms of when I was on the right path and when I was getting pulled off the right path, right? And obviously, emotions have a lot of utility value in terms of evolutions or adaptations that we've talked about, right? In terms of we're more susceptible to feeling positive emotion when we're on track and towards a valuable goal.
Right.
And then we feel negative emotion when we're off track of that. And granted, those emotional systems can be oversensitized or it can become
maladaptive, right?
Yeah, exactly, over time. But that doesn't mean to disregard emotion because it's a communication tool, right? There's so many reasons why we not only survive but thrive because of the holistic interpretation and communication that our bodies offer, emotion being one of them. And there's a time to disregard emotion. There's a time to pay attention.
And there's a time to trust yourself in that process and the emotion you're feeling, how essential it is to align, your emotions and the kind of inner workings of the nervous system and the brain, that when you can trust yourself. And you can, and you don't need a lot of explanation as to why you're doing it. You just know it's not the thing for me, or you just know it is the thing for you. And emotions play a big role in giving you that quick communication, right? It's like, boom, there's an emotional response here. Maybe it's fear, maybe it's anger, maybe it's frustration. And there's a time to pay attention to that. And to listen to that, like it's a communication. It's not something to just be disregarded and thrown away. And what I have found on my journey, when I look at the 20-year journey, when I felt most fulfilled, as you spoke about as a byproduct, most happy, most inspired, most passionate, is when I was most aware and aligned with what was most meaningful to me. Mm-hmm. And the periods of sustainable suffering or frustration or self-doubt or, sadness or insecurity, like those things manifested, obviously retrospectively, you look back on these things and it's obvious, but, when I wasn't listening to that thread of meaning and purpose that I can see goes back all the way to when I was a kid, like the more I was able to be aware and trust that meaning, that knowing inside of what's most meaningful and purposeful to me, like those were the moments where I felt most fulfilled and most aligned. And when I would talk myself out of certain things, when this meaning and knowing was there, that's where the most frustration is. And as we talk about, it's like, I'm in the arena. I'm going for it. I'm fighting for it, but maybe I'm not fighting for the thing that's most meaningful to me, right? I've kind of fighting a different fight.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And how what we find most meaningful evolves over time, right? And through, like we talk about aiming at the highest mountain peak you can see, but when our life's in chaos or it's foggy, we can't see very far. So it's like, hey, like, I just want to wake up on time tomorrow. I just want to make sure I get in 3 meals, right? I got to get my kid to school. Like that's what I can see. And then as you pursue things, what we aim at in terms of character development or contribution or impact, we can start seeing further. So our sensitivities to those things will evolve and change over time. Yeah. So I love that idea. I remember reading about the difference between consumatory reward and anticipatory reward systems in the brain from an emotional perspective, right? Because for a while I've been pursuing emotional experience as the foundation of things. It's like, and it was never, it never really worked as well as it did before I did that. When I just pursued what I believed perceptually to be most meaningful to me in terms of who I want to become as a person. And you know, at least the studies they did based off of the reward systems in the brain with dopamine as an example, was that if you eat a cheeseburger or pizza, that's consumatory reward, meaning you get an instant hit and there's a fade. There's a saturation effect built into it, which means you have pizza every day, the amount of dopamine hit you get decreases, right? That's saturation. Like we think about that all the time. Then there's the anticipatory reward system where we feel the highest amount of dopamine and positive emotional experience in pursuit, in anticipation of a valued goal. And once we achieve it, once we get there to the mountaintop, we have the consumatory reward, but that's not the end all be all, because that's why we get the feeling of, okay, what's next? It's never enough. So for only pursuing things for that hit, then that's never enough syndrome, right? We see that all the time. We've experienced that for ourselves, but it's the anticipatory reward and the positive emotion that comes from that through the expectation of a meaningful aim. It's in route to that when the most positive experiences will descend upon us. Because it's like, and that was a cool thing to kind of figure out, because what would be the opposite of that? What would be not doing that is like, let me try to pick something that I don't find meaningful and bring a positive emotional experience to it. And it's like banging your head against the wall every day, right?
Yeah, it's this idea that the foundation of creating your life is not emotion. Like that's not the reference point. That's not the anchor. The anchor point, the reference point is what's most meaningful to me. So it kind of eliminates this idea of, well, you can be fulfilled and happy no matter what you're doing. No. No, not true. Like to me, that's muscling ourselves to fight the fight in the arena that's not ours to fight. Like this isn't meaningful to me. So to create fulfillment through this space, it's going to leave me very short of the fulfillment and joy and inspiration and passion that I might be seeking, because I'm in the wrong place. I'm fighting the wrong fight. You know, I need to get into the fight or the pursuit, as you put it, that's meaningful to me. And number one, when I'm in the pursuit of what's meaningful to me, yes, the byproduct is fulfillment and passion and inspiration, but it also gives me the motivation and the resilience to overcome the things that are going to happen in life, the challenges, the obstacles, and all the fun things life throws at us, right? So when you're aligned with that pursuit, as you said perfectly there, Josh, one, byproduct, fulfillment, passion, inspiration, joy, love, whatever, all those wonderful things, but it also gives us the motivation and the resiliency to live this incredible life of meaning and purpose.
Yeah. Well said. I know we talked about, I don't know when it was all blur now, but probably yesterday when I was out there.
Or 3 weeks ago, who knows?
Was like, I thought of this recently as like, there's kind of 3 places that I orientate to in the arena, right? Like there's one place in the arena is to be in the arena fighting on the side or for a cause that you don't believe in, right? Or that you no longer believe in, right? And so we could equate that to one level of suffering or hardship or challenge, right? Another one would be to be in the stands, right? Being a passenger of life, being a witness of life, right? And I think of that position as the pursuit of ease.
Yes.
The opposite of challenge, right? And like a lot of us have an inner desire to grow. We've talked about this, right? Yes. And to grow, we need certain challenges and stressors, but the optimal challenge, right? To grow. But if we pursue easiness, like I remember asking one client, they're like, I just want an easy life. I'm like, well, how metaphorically, how does this sound? I can get you a ticket in the arena, metaphorically, at the highest seat in the back. You can come late, you can leave early, no one will know, and it doesn't make a difference. Like, how attractive does that sound? They're like, no, it doesn't sound attractive at all. It's like, yeah, but you're coming from a place of saying, I don't want to fight anymore. This doesn't feel good. This is suffering.
Yes.
It's hard, and I don't want to do it anymore. It's like, and you're saying, I don't want to fight anymore. It's like, well, no, you don't, but I get why you think that.
Of course.
Right? It's because you're in the arena fighting for something that's not true to your heart.
You only believe that you perceive that's the only other option.
Exactly. So it makes sense, right?
Sure.
And that brings us to like what you said, the third place is to be what we want is not the absence of a cause.
Right.
We want a cause that we choose, that's worthy of us, that's most aligned with what we find most meaningful in our life, right? And that's the third place, which is in the arena, on the side of something that you truly believe in. Once we named the ultimate aim that we believe in, right, which is to become who we could be, to close the gap between who we are and who we could be, and to aim at the most meaningful thing we can see, to be in a consistent pursuit towards that. And how do we figure out what that is? And so that's why we broke down our curriculum into 3 core courses to help people become who they could be and pursue that thing they find most meaningful. The first one is AIM, right? In order to elicit these positive emotional experiences that we talked about, you have to aim at something, right? And sometimes we don't know, like how many times have we dealt with this or with clients, like, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I want this. I don't know, you know what I mean? I don't know what the next step is. And I don't know A or B. And it's like, you have to start somewhere because clarity comes in motion, in pursuit.
Yes.
So it's like AIM is all about finding and looking and analyzing who we are today, where we've been, to kind of like draw these inferences in terms of like what we found most meaningful in the past, and to trust that, and how to aim at something and to move towards that, right? And so the course starts with this maximal character development that we talked about, becoming who we could be, and then how to aim at something, how to aim and move towards that thing, and then how to be in pursuit of that, whether it's in career, whether it's relationships, whether it's with contribution, whether it's with cleaning your room, right? Depending on how foggy your life is or what current level of stress and hardship. I mean, going back to this idea of the consummatory reward or anticipatory reward systems in the brain, they're both inhibited with chronic and severe stress, which means we don't have the ability to experience positive emotion when we're in heightened chronic states of stress. So if that's the case, sometimes the mountain that we can see is 3 feet in front of us. And it's the thing that's stressing us out. And it's like, because if we can dampen this, we can start pursuing something more meaningful. So we go from what we say, this 3-foot molehill right in front of you. And then from that hill, you can now see a 10-foot cliff, right?
Yeah, I love that, because I think so many people, when they come to a point of, hey, what do you want to do with your life? What's most meaningful? What's the aim? What's the goal? It's like, man, I don't know, man. Like, that seems so big. I don't know what Everest I'm supposed to climb in my life. And it's like, and you're speaking directly to that, because, right, to your point, if I'm, in the ocean drowning, and I come over and you come over to me and say, Matt, where do you see yourself 10 years from now? And you're like, 10 years from now, I just need to make sure my head stays above the water for the next minute.
Yeah.
Right. And so, hey, the first mountain is get out of this water that I'm drowning in.
Yeah.
Once I get out of there, now we can have a different conversation. And so the cool thing about what I believe we've done with the AIM course is we've created an opportunity to, no matter where you are, right, it's a starting point. Because maybe right now, to your point, Josh, like, I don't even know what I'm doing this afternoon. I'm just surviving my day. Like we've been on the phone with those clients. Like, I don't know. I can't even, what are you doing next weekend? I don't know. Right. Or what do you want to do with your life? I was joking around with a young woman I was calling. She's like, man, I don't know what to do when I grow up. I'm like, yeah, I talk to 50-year-olds. They say the same thing to me. Don't worry about it.
Exactly.
So that's I think that's what's so special about, how we framed the AIM course, is it literally can just get you to a place of, hey, right now, from where I'm at, based on, extracting from my past and what I've kind of align with or connect with, or what I can be aware of what's meaningful to me, like, and based on where I am currently in my life, like, I think this is what I'm going to focus on, and that's it. And I don't need to know the next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. Like, that's not important right now. Like, let's just get you out of the water, right? And then we can have another conversation.
Yeah, no, I love that example. I remember thinking, like, if you're underwater, you can't even hear the conversation.
Amen.
On what you want, right? And so it's like, hey, head above water, oxygen, then I'm still have the possibility of drowning. It's like my next aim is to get on the boat.
Amen.
On the boat back to shore. So it gets further and further, right? So it's just like start somewhere. Like sometimes like, what do you want to be when you grow up? I don't know. What's most meaningful to you? I don't know. Who do you want to be as a person? I don't know. It's like, do you want your life to be better or worse? Better. Beautiful.
Sure.
Let's talk about what that might look like in the next 10 seconds. It's like,
Exactly.
if I had a little bit more energy, I think I'd feel better. It's like, beautiful. Let's start there.
Amen.
Right.
Yeah, I love it, Josh. Yep, perfect.
So cool. And then that goes us right into the second course, which is Align, right? Which is like, I mean, that course, we talked about that for probably 30 hours straight. And
I
just
don't know if we have that kind of time right now, man.
Yeah, exactly. But I know there's so much to pull into that space. I know we're both huge fans of Robert Sapolsky's work with stress and how that inhibits and affects the different things in life that can regulate our experience, including emotion, right? But one of the things that I know we both connected on with Gabor Mate's work is to looking at emotions and different things in our nervous system as adaptations.
Yes.
Right. And they serve a purpose. So sometimes if a client comes to me, like one of my first mentors used to always say, I'm going to share the story with you, is that when a client comes in and says, here's my problem, I want you to hear that they're saying, here's my solution. Yes. I don't know what it's a solution to.
Exactly.
Right. So if someone says, I have an anger problem. It's like, they have an anger is a solution to them for something. Yes. We don't know what it is, but now they have shame and judgment towards themselves for this maladaptive thing that is just creating destruction in their life. And it's like, I'm so stupid. What's wrong with me? It's like, well, first, let's just start with where this came from so you can have appreciation and gratitude towards it. Right. Yeah. And if it had, like, all adaptations carry some utility at some point in time.
100%.
Right. And so if someone, with one example that seemed to be pretty classic with some of the men I've worked with anger was there was a point in their life when they weren't angry, and they learned to become angry, an adaptation, in order to protect themselves from re-experiencing some form of trauma. Yep. Right. And because of that was their adaptation. So it got reinforced time and time again. They stopped re-experiencing trauma. So that's an extremely valuable adaptation. Now, if it doesn't get mitigated through maturation or development, it has the possibility of becoming maladaptive over time. You don't connect with people, you snap when you feel like you're being betrayed, all these types of things. But it's like, hey, understand the value that it gave to you and have an appreciation for it. Because I always think like the people that suffer the most in life are the slow adapters. Right? The people that go through some form of trauma and never form an adaptation. Yep. They never get angry. So then they re-experience something over and over again. So it's like, hey, the worst place to be was to never develop the anger to begin with. Right. Doesn't mean it has the same utility value today, but oh my gosh, like we're by no means in the worst case scenario.
For sure.
Right. And then learning how to, and also understanding when anger is still adaptive.
Yeah, it comes in handy.
Yeah.
Certain scenarios, for sure. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And so there's an energetic power in anger. And so if you're conscious of it, you can leverage the emotional systems from a communication standpoint, from an action standpoint, to be able to keep you on track, to be able to push through barriers. Right. And so it's like, there's utility value in all emotions. Right. Now, the degree of utility varies. Sure. Right. And so like, we've talked about the difference between guilt and shame. Right. Guilt is tied to behavior. Shame is tied to identity, right? I know you talk about this a lot with parenting with kids, and shame. It's like, okay, so shame, in most cases, if it's relevant in adulthood, it's more than likely maladaptive, right? Because there's a dissociation that happens because you're completely unworthy, right? But as an infant, shame can cause you to dissociate from sensation and feeling if the continued connection to sensation and feeling is overbearing to the nervous system.
Right. Shut it down.
Exactly. So even what I think was the most quote unquote destructive emotional experiences for someone have utility value in some places.
Yeah. And it really speaks to, how certain emotional responses are saving your life based on the environment you're in, right?
Yeah.
But where it can go south is you're no longer in that environment, but your nervous system and emotional, defaults are still responding as if you were in the prior environment. Classic example are people that have like fought in wars, and over in the, we both worked in that space with people, coming back from the Middle East and whatnot. And the example I use, sometimes with people is, hearing a loud noise and jumping behind something and taking cover is what saved you. It's why you're alive right now, because that was the thing your nervous system trained, and that's why you survived that environment of bombs going off and things getting flying around you. Like, you hear a noise and boom, you hit the ground and take cover. That response literally saved your life. Well, fast forward, you come back to the good old US of A and you're at Starbucks and somebody drops a book on the ground and you jump under a table. That's a maladaptation. Like we need to, realign things, in a way where it makes sense based on the environment. And I know in the Align course, you'll see it's going from the old self to the new self, which is completely correlated with what's most meaningful and what's the most meaningful place for me to go, and how do I become that person? How do I align myself, my emotions, my beliefs, etc., to make sure that I'm aligned with that result, with that outcome?
Yeah. One of the most interesting things that we kind of drilled down to when we were talking about the different emotional responses in relation to the environment was kind of with the hierarchy of where we're meeting our needs.
Yes. Good old
right?
Maslow. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like fear. Okay. It's like pretty well understood that fear can be a response to threat, right? Okay. Threat to what? Threat to safety, threat to roof over my head, threat to food, threat to survival. Like, we're all aware of those. It's how fear is most referenced, right? But it's a threat, not necessarily to what threat. Mm-hmm. Depends on where we regulate our experience. So if I'm worried about food and shelter, fear is most likely to respond to things that threaten that. Now, if I've had food and shelter for the past 10 years, whether I have that is not the determining factor in what regulates my day-to-day experience, right? And so if I'm in a space of like, if we move up the hierarchy and we're in a space of belonging, what makes me feel good and connected and whatever is based on where I derive my sense of belonging in a group, with an organization, with a family, in a relationship, whatever. And then my threat and my fear response will react to anything that threatens that. Right. And then if we no longer derive our quality of experience of life through the belonging, it moves up, right, to self-esteem, self-actualization, contribution, to where up in the higher states, it's like, hey, my fear response is wired towards what is a threat to me becoming the maximal version of myself, or the maximal contribution that I perceive I can have.
And that's when you'll pick the mission purpose over belonging to a certain community or group.
Exactly. So it just, what I found lately in the past, 6 months to a year, and then just the past few weeks talking to you, is that this stuff is much more complicated, right? It's very complex, like the emotions, the brain, the behavior. But when you take these complex ideas and talk about it to a group, you have to simplify it. But when you simplify it, you miss the nuances because it's not simple.
Exactly.
Right. So you have to have a depth of understanding to be able to understand how this relates to people. Right. Because if we talked about, I think one of the first topics we talked about there was categorical thinking.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. And how much you miss the nuances and over rely on things that exist in one category and underestimate the difference of things that exist outside of it. Right.
For sure.
The third course is habits, and it's about cultivating the routines, the rituals, the habits, and the discipline to maximize how far we can go and accelerate our path on that journey, right? I could be in the process of becoming, and I could be aiming at a meaningful mountain, and I could be hiking backwards, right? Yeah. Or I could not bring water, And so I'm dehydrated. So my sleep quality is left. I don't go through certain REM cycles. The amount of energy my body can go, so how far I can travel every day. All this stuff impacts our ability to accelerate our journey or the efficiency we have on that journey. How about I'm hiking up the mountain, I get distracted every 5 minutes at flowers and I go off track. You know what I mean? It could take me years to get somewhere that it could have took me 6 months.
Yeah.
Right. But now that I'm thinking out loud, it's important to be able to have some evaluative structure or system to determine the efficiency of your path, because I could be on this path of what I deem a meaningful mountain. And I could be getting distracted every 5 minutes. I could be going down the longest path to the peak. I could be extremely dehydrated. And you could say, hey, Josh, I don't know if you're doing the most aligned thing. And I'm like, no, like, this is a meaningful mountain. Thank you. Like, I love this. And you're like, I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying you're going down this path. And I'm like, yeah, but this path is on my meaningful mountain. Like, I've committed to this path. And you're like, yeah, I'm just saying this way. Like, if you relate it to all the different things on how to get to the top of that mountain, it's like, oh, again, it's much more of a dynamic process.
Yeah, so you're talking about like feedback loops and like having things in places. I think of as bumpers.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Like as I go up this path, and I'm on the perceived path, right? Like I always relate to it as I'm on the perceived path because I don't know what I don't know, right?
Yeah, exactly.
As you walk up the mountain, as you start taking action, and to your point you said earlier, you can't steer something that's not in motion. Right. Mm-hmm. So the only way to know the path is to be moving on a path. Right. Yeah. There's no way to find the path unless you're walking a path. Like the path illuminates itself as you're walking the path. Mm-hmm. And so to have certain, reference points, bumpers in place to let us know, hey, I'm all in on this perceived path, but knowing when, oh, this doesn't make sense anymore. I know things now when I'm up here on the mountain that I didn't know down here. So this path that I perceived was the way up, I was committed to it here. But now that I'm here, I see that it doesn't go where I thought it was going. And it's absolutely essential to stay committed to what's most meaningful to you and to that, we'll call it that core identity of who you want to become, because to me, that's the bumper. That's the thing that says, oh, this no longer aligns with who I want to be in the world. I can now see there's another way, but there's no way to see that until you start walking up to that point. And that is a skill set that I know you and I, by stumbling over it and screwing it up a billion times, we see the value of that. And so the habits course really teaches you how to navigate the path, what actions make sense, what strategies make sense, how to get the feedback on that journey so that you know when to make a hard left, when necessary.
Yeah. Well, one of the things you said that I love is this idea of the perceptual path. Yeah. Right? Because if we relate to it as the perceptual path, it'll give us the tendency to keep our eyes open on the journey. Correct. Because if I relate to it, whether it's insecurity, arrogance, or whatever, it's like, oh, this is the path. My eyes are now closed and I cannot see anything, which actually prevents me from learning, prevents me from recalibrating, prevents me from making tweaks along the way, thinking prematurely that it's a predestined path that I've named and committed to without the ability to learn and adapt. Right. So it's like, and I think about that tying back into the IM course when someone says, I don't know what I want. It's like, you're not supposed to know what you want. You're supposed to think and be willing to be wrong over and over again, but you have to keep your eyes open, because the only other thing about not picking something is to pick something and prematurely think it's the thing for life and to close your eyes, because you're going to wake up at some point down that line years later, and who knows what the realization that you have and how painful that realization might be, because who knows, it might be more, at least from a pain pleasure standpoint, to just keep your eyes closed. Right.
In the moment.
Yeah, exactly. So I love the idea of the perceived path. It's always a perceived path. The path me and you on right now is a perceived path. Absolutely. Right. And that's what I love so much about debating, because, even though we've had a really strong relationship, when we get in a room together, it's not just cheerleading each other and, oh, you're amazing. Oh, I'm amazing too. Like, oh my gosh, like you can do anything you want. It's like, hey, I don't believe that's true. I don't agree with that. And like, how many times have I said that in the past 3 weeks? You know,
I don't
it's
know.
like,
Once or twice.
yeah. I don't agree with that. And just, but realizing how much and when in my life I've muted that,
Mhm.
right? And it's like, you know, there's this idea that it's not safe to speak,
Mhm.
right? There are spaces in our life where it's not safe to speak, and that, from my own case, has regulated my willingness to speak up with what I see,
For
right?
sure.
Based off the environment I'm in or the relationships I'm in, right? But what I've learned is, which isn't unique to me, is how unsafe it is not to speak,
Yeah.
right? And not to follow and speak your truth, regardless of it's ignorant or arrogant or whatever, but be willing to be authentic and true to where you are, and to cultivate relationships that allow you to express that in a way that's, you know, that either not resonates, but that it's just,
It's conducive to learning and growing and seeing other perspectives and evolving, right?
yep,
Like, I mean,
yep,
that's what it's all about. To me, it's like why I value our relationship so much is because number one, you're not afraid to say, "Man, I disagree with you," and number two, I can do the same to you. And what always comes out of that is both of us go here
yeah, yeah,
through that wrestling. You know what I
yes,
mean? Like it's like we've had those moments where like, did we just come up with that? You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like after
yeah,
like, you know, wrestling with the ideas. I don't even think that we're wrestling with each other. We're wrestling with these ideas and concepts and trying to, you know, extrapolate and extract out something that we can leverage for ourselves and then use to empower others.
yeah. So as we were talking about building this thing, this, you know, is one of the things that we wanted to do based off what we found would be most meaningful for not only us, but whatever contribution we were going to make to other people, is how can we build a support system, which is a balancing act, to give people community, to give people a sense of belonging, to help them structure a path to be able to find a meaningful aim and to become something more, while still empowering them to go off and be creative and to be and live whatever's true to them, whatever that might look like, right? So it's like, hey, this empowerment, creativity, you know, I think I'll let you talk about what your metaphor was recently for it,
If I can remember it.
with the bicycle and the things that's on the bicycle. Training wheels.
Oh yeah, yeah, got it. Yes, 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 yes.
Right. I don't remember saying, it's been a long few days.
Handlebars, yeah.
I was like a motorcycle, yeah. Yeah, like I didn't say that. But you know, we wanted to build a community. We wanted to build something that people can be a part of, but we wanted to make sure that it's designed to empower people, whether they come to one course and take that material that they have access to forever and just go live their life. And guess what?
Yeah.
They can come touch back in.
Mhm.
They can get whatever level of support they want that supports them in their life, whatever that happens to be.
Yeah.
Right? They can engage at any level, any point in time. And so we wanted to give the different degrees of support while making it a priority to empower people and not make them dependent on a specific system or our organization.
Right. Yeah, I think I know what you're talking about now with the bicycle, but yeah, it's this idea of like teaching them how to ride the bike with the training wheels and being there by their side, or teaching them how to like find what's most meaningful for themselves, be empowered, and then as they start to be able to ride that bike, on their own, we kind of back away and let them ride. But we're here if you want to learn how to do tricks on your bike, if you want to learn how to go faster on your bike, if you want to learn how to do different types of terrain with your bike, like we're here to support you on whatever it is you want to do. But our goal is to get you to stand on your own 2 feet, empowered, but also leverage this incredible community and the resources that are here that can accelerate you to become more empowered and to create beyond what you thought was possible. Because like we spoke earlier, maybe when you get up to this peak that you think is the top, you get there and you realize, oh, wait, there's this other cool thing I want to do. Awesome. Yeah. Like, how can we help you do that? You know, and the other piece of this that I think is important, Josh, is, you know, we are aligning ourselves with other incredible people and practitioners out there. So if you want to strive to this peak, and Josh and I look at each other like, we've never done that before. We don't know, we can't help you with that. But we've aligned with so-and-so, and I would absolutely take their course, go to do their thing, because they think they can get you to the next part. So this idea of community, not only our Arena Method community, but also aligning ourselves with the amazing people that are out there doing amazing things in so many different areas, you know, in personal development, growth, etc. And to me, that's what excites me, man, because there's a lot of courses I'm still going to be taking, right? And things that I want to learn from these amazing individuals out there that are doing incredible things. Like that's never going to stop. And then if we can help to, you know, structure some of these things, so it's like, hey, if this is the peak you want to get to, we've gotten some great results with their program with this person, and hey, I would go talk to so and so, or they're a great coach, they're a great practitioner. Go check them out.
Yeah. And we'll go with you sometimes, right?
Totally. We'll go as a group.
Yeah. No, you took the words right out of my mouth. I absolutely love that. It's benefited me so much in my life having that, because there's not only so many different avenues of different experts and people in this space, but there's also multiple experts teaching the same thing. For sure. From a different perspective, from different experience, from different application, with a different resonance and different tone and different everything, right? It's like, hey, so this is not the end all be all, right? This is a one-stop thing that we're creating for people to create something that resonates, but to be able to go out there and explore everything. A catalyst to explore and live an extraordinary life. If we can play that one small role with anybody that comes through these doors, mission accomplished. Yeah. One of the things that we talked about building was a curriculum to help people to develop the capacity to serve others, right? So a coaching curriculum, and what does that look like? I know I've been through a ton of them and seen the different aspects of what's in the industry from a coaching perspective. What I found most helpful and what I found was just
not helpful.
Nothing. Yeah, I'm just trying to be PG here. Just shit. You know what I mean? And it's just nothing more than a revenue generator, right? But there's no training. There's no training on creating safety. There's no training on entrepreneurship or how to build a practice in a space, or how to collaborate with others. You know, none of that stuff. It's a lot of just give us your money and you'll eventually get through the system, right? And so. But at that same time, it's okay, cool. We want quality control. We have a vested interest in developing quality, right? Now that's a balancing act, because the more you try to control anything, the more you can stifle innovation and creativity, which we both have found to be the ingredients for success in this industry as an entrepreneur, as a coach. So how do we give somebody support and structure without dampening their innovation and creativity, their own independence, their own message, and their own communication of that message?
Yeah, and honestly, like, and we've talked about this obviously ad nauseum, but I feel like when that is done to people, you're robbing the world of the unique expression that they have that literally nobody else on the planet has. Yeah. So if it's dimming that light, if it's suppressing that unique expression of who they are, you're literally robbing that of people, of the world. And so, and I know we talk about this so much, like, how do we give structure that enhances that expression of who they are, and it allows that light of who they are to shine the most vibrantly, because that's the biggest gift not only we can give to this individual, but it's the biggest gift we can give to the planet, because that each person shining as that bright light, vibrant being that they are is the biggest gift we can all give to humanity.
Yeah. Yeah. And to that note, something that we are both super passionate about is like, hey, I have an idea too. And you're like, oh my gosh, I had the same idea, was this whole idea of our impact, that we don't strive to be the best or the sole impact in the world, but that we're just recognizing how many authentic, good-hearted people are out there trying to make a difference in the planet and aligning with those and trying to build an organization that's also partners with them from a charity standpoint, from a contribution standpoint. And so one of the things that I love the most about what we're building is that we're going to find some of the best charities that we would love to align with and put what we get from the organization, what the organization builds or what people build through the certification process, and they get to pick, right? As a community, we get to vote, we get to pick on where that money goes to, so that the second they step in the door, they're impacting the world.
The impact is happening.
Right.